Welcome to another episode of the Clueless Dude's Real Tool Reviews. Today we're looking at the Hypertough 12-volt impact driver. We're looking at its basic features. What's in the box? Drill versus impact driver demonstration and test. What's all that noise? A speed bit test. We're also going to drive a lag bolt into some pressure treated wood to see how it does. We'll also test with some decking screws, and then we'll have a conclusion. All right, guys, let's get started.
Let's look at what comes inside the box of the Hypertough 12-volt max cordless impact driver. Inside the box we find a charger. This charger has the barrel attachment on the end. That barrel attachment goes to the back of this 12-volt 1.5 amp hour battery. It gets plugged in like so. This end gets plugged into the wall. There's a light here. While it's charging, that light is red. When it's done charging, the light turns green. Once it's green, you know you've got a full battery. You can then take your battery, place it into the base of the impact driver. The impact driver has a variable speed trigger. It's got a reverse and forward switch just like any other impact driver or drill would have. There's a nifty little light on the front. There's a cool little belt clip right here. In addition to that, on the front, there's a quick release chuck. If you're not familiar with a quick release chuck, it works like so. If you have a bit that is 1/4 inch and it's got that little notch right there, you see that notch in the center? You grab your chuck just like so on the outside. You push it forward. You then take the bit and you place it into the chuck. You then release the outside of the chuck and it's in place. And it is really in place. Once you're done, you can then simply slide the outer rim of the chuck forward, and the bit just comes right out. That's why they call it a quick release chuck. One more thing, when you open up your package and you take out your nice new impact driver, be sure to check the bottom of the package for another package. It's easy to miss. There's 2 little bits in there. I almost threw them out with the packing material. Don't you do that. All right, that's everything. That is the basic overall functions of this impact driver. We're now going to do some testing. Let's get started.
Even though drills and impact drivers look very similar, they are in fact quite different. And we're going to demonstrate that here. We're going to take this 12-volt impact driver and put it against a 12-volt drill so you can see the difference. And just so you can understand the scale of the difference, we're going to take this 12-volt impact driver and put it up against a 20-volt drill, and we'll see which one comes out on top.
All right, guys, we're ready for the first test. That is driving a lag bolt into a bunch of 2x4s. Here's what we have. We have the 12-volt drill going first. We've got the 20-volt drill going second. And thirdly, we have the impact driver that's being reviewed today going third. It is my belief that this $23 12-volt drill will be the weakest. My next guess is that the $30 20-volt drill will be the next weakest. And then thirdly, the 12-volt impact driver will be the strongest of these 3. I'll remind you that the item on the left and the right are both 12-volt, take the same battery, and the item in the center is a drill that takes a 20-volt battery. So it's going to be 12-volt drill, 20-volt drill, impact driver, 12-volt. And we'll see what happens. Here we go. All right. We're starting off with the 12-volt drill in drill mode, and we'll see what happens. Here we go. All right, that's as far as the drill will do it. Now I'm going to go ahead here, and I'm going to switch it on over to the 20-volt drill, and we'll see what it does. Here we go with the 20-volt drill. And my guess is it'll go a little bit further than this, but not as far as the impact driver. Here we go. All right, that's it. That's as far as this one went. And again, I did pretty good. Again, this is not an impact driver. This is just a regular old-fashioned drill, but 20 volts. Let's see how the 12-volt impact driver does. All right, 12-volt impact driver. Well, there you go. In fact, it can go a little bit more. And it's totally down flat. So the question is, which has the most power? A 12-volt drill, a 20-volt drill, or a 12-volt impact driver? The answer is the 12-volt impact driver. What we also learned, just as importantly, is it's also the loudest. So if you got neighbors, and you may not be able to use this at 2 in the morning. But yeah, it worked pretty good. All right, guys, let's go look at some other things. And so far, so good. I've enjoyed this.
Based on what you just saw, you now realize that impact drivers and drills look similar, but the impact driver has 2 features going for it. One, it is able to put a lot more torque onto that bit, and secondly, it can make a lot more noise. But why is that? Let's find out in the next section, where we give a quick overview of how impact driver works. And on the second half of the next section, we even do it with hand tools to make it clear so that everyone can understand, even your humble announcer.
Before I continue testing the impact driver, I want to go over the difference between a drill and an impact driver. What I have in front of you here is a lag bolt this long going into a bunch of 2x4s. I pre-drilled it a little bit so it would go into a certain depth. And I'm going to try to drive it further in with this drill. When there's enough back pressure on the socket, which will be over this lag bolt, the drill will stop. And let's listen to the motor very carefully when that happens. So let's take a listen very carefully to the motor as the drill is overpowered. And you can hear the motor automatically turn itself off. There's protection circuits that protect the drill from being given too much back pressure that may burn out the motor. Let's try the same thing, but this time using the same exact socket, but with an impact driver. So here is the impact driver, and we're going to try the same thing. And I want you to listen very carefully to the noises this makes. I took my finger off the trigger, it would have kept going. And as you can hear, there's kind of a clunk, 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 clunk sound. And what that is this. Every time there's enough back pressure on this, on the socket to stop it, the motor disengages from the drivetrain for a split second, and it actually has what are called hammers. This is not a hammer drill, totally separate. But there's an internal port called a hammer, and it actually spins. There's actually generally 2 of them, opposite each other for balance, but it spins. And when it gets back up to speed, it re-engages for a split second, and it turns the socket just a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and it keeps getting the engine back up, the motor back up to speed. The hammer re-engages, hits the drivetrain, turns the socket just a little bit, and so on. And so that's how it's able to do it. If that doesn't make sense, no problem. I'm going to try demonstrating it with a slightly different method. I'm going to keep the same exact socket. I'm going to set it off to the side, and I'm going to use a hand tool. If you've never seen one of these, this is a breaker bar. It's not too different from, let's say, a ratchet wrench, except there's no ratchet. It's just a very basic tool. It's got a wobbly thing, and that's the socket. So I'm going to go over the same exact lag bolt. A drill does continuous pressure, kind of like this. But an impact driver more or less does this. It's the same amount of energy. I'm not putting out any more effort, but the difference is the energy is given to the drivetrain in spurts. So all this time while I'm getting speed up until I make the impact, all this energy is building up, and then the impact is all released in that one moment. And that's what makes that clunk sound. You hear that clunk sound when I was using the impact driver just now. You've probably heard it if you've ever been to a tire shop. It's the same thing, except theirs are a lot more powerful. And that's how it works. That's how come the impact driver, despite the fact that these two have the same battery, probably have more or less the same amount of power in their motors, that's why the impact driver can put a lot more torque into a socket than a drill. But you also notice it was slower, and that's because every time it disengages, you're not moving the socket, and then it re-engages with pretty much a good clunk. Hope that makes sense. And now let's get back onto the testing.
Wow, that was so clear, even I understood it. All right, now on to the speed bit test. What is a speed bit? A speed bit is like a spade bit, but it's got threads on the front that pull the bit into the wood and thus require a lot more torque. To pull through the wood, it goes faster, but uses more torque, so it's great for testing. Here we go.
All right, guys, it's time for the next test, and that is a speed bit. If you're not familiar with them, they're similar to a spade bit, except they've got this threading on the front that pulls the bit into the wood so that it will decide how fast it's going to go in for every rotation. That thread on the front is going to pull it down so much. So this is 1 1/8, one of the bigger ones that I happen to have in the studio. And we're going to see which of the drills and the driver can do the best with it. I'll throw a disclaimer on it. Always make sure that if you're doing something like this, that it's an impact rated bit. Okay guys, let's get started and let's see what happens. Let's do some damage. Alrighty, I'm starting with the weakest guy, which is actually one of my favorite drills for day-to-day stuff, and that is the 12-volt Hypertough drill. And my guess is as soon as that Y part hits the wood, it's going to come screeching to a halt. Here we go. Yep, and that's fine. And again, I want to be very clear. It's not a normal spade bit. It's a speed version of it, and that's why it takes a lot more energy. So, to answer the question, no, the 12-volt drill cannot do it. Let's try the 20-volt drill next. All right, next is the 20-volt drill. And I'm going to start the hole right next to the previous one. And here we go. And the answer is it went a little bit further than the 12-volt, but not by much. It's and again, this is a very big ask for entry-level tools. So, yeah, it didn't quite do it. All right, let's try the impact driver and see what it can do. And again, if you're doing this at home, make sure that you're using a bit that is appropriate and wear appropriate safety equipment. It's no joke. Impact drivers occasionally will break things and metal goes flying. All right, here we go. All right, impact driver. I've got it securely attached and right direction, and here we go. All right, and that's how far it got. It got quite a bit further, and it did still out. Let me back it out a little bit. Clear out the wood, and then let me go forward again. Nope, that's as far as it's going to go. And so I'll go grab a caliper, and we'll see how deep each one of those were. I'll be right back. All right, viewers, let's see how they each did. First, I'm going to check out to see how deep the hole is from the 12-volt drill. So I'm going to go ahead here, and I'm actually going to use the depth gauge for this. And being sure not to hit the center, it was 4.56 millimeters. Again, 12-volt drill. I'm going to check next with the 20-volt drill. The 20-volt drill was the middle hole, and see we are zeroed out, and we'll see how it did. 13.3 millimeters, not too bad. Now let's check it out with what the depth is for the impact driver. And again, this will be the 12-volt impact driver, which was the bulk of today's demonstration. And let's see how it did. There you go. A little over 48 millimeters. So there is a heck of a difference there. And you can see that the impact driver, even a 12-volt one, is considerably more powerful than a 20-volt drill. All right, guys, let's go on to the next thing, and then we'll get a conclusion.
All right, guys, if you're into decking and pressure-treated wood, this is what's coming up next. The next section is about pressure-treated wood. Pressure-treated wood is harder to go through than normal wood, so the tests here are going to be a little bit harder, even if we're using the same screw or lag bolt. I have one request. Before we get there, in order for me to make any money off this, or at least break even, I need to get 500 subscribers. Without 500 subscribers, YouTube won't pay me. So if you find this useful, please hit that subscribe key. Because if I don't get paid by YouTube, I'm going to have to live under a bridge. Okay, guys, let's go on with the testing. Onto pressure-treated wood, the kind that's used for decking and outdoor use. Here we go.
All right, we're back. This is pressure-treated wood. As you may know, pressure-treated wood is much harder to drill through or screw through than normal wood. So I'm going to try with the 12-volt drill and then the 12-volt impact driver to see if they can drive a standard decking screw. The reason why I'm doing this test is this. A lot of people who get impact drivers get them for using on decking. So if they're replacing decking boards, they want to know if it can do it, and they also want to know, do they need it? In other words, can they use their drill? So we're going to give it a shot, and we'll see what happens. 12-volt drill into pressure-treated wood. Wow, it did it. Not a problem. Let's compare that to, let's say, the impact driver. Again, also 12 volt. Let's see how it does. Well, there you go. As you can see, both the drill and the impact driver were able to put in a 4-inch decking screw into pressure-treated wood. Alright guys, it's time for one of my favorite unfair tests. As you know, at the end of every video, I like to do what I call the unfair test. One that pushes the device being tested to its limits. Now in this case, even though this is really an impact driver demonstration, I've been using both a drill, a 12-volt drill, a 20-volt drill, and the impact driver. And I'm going to start off with the 12-volt drill. I'm going to try driving this lag bolt into 3 pieces of pressure-treated wood with no pre-drilling. Just to be clear, most sane people would pre-drill before they put a lag bolt into a bunch of pressure-treated wood. But nope, not here on the Clueless Dude channel, because I want to show you the limits of what these devices can do to help you decide if they're good for your project. So again, I'm not saying you should do this or that it's even particularly good for the tools being used, but I'm saying if you can see what it can do when it's being abused, it'll help you understand the limits for doing reasonable day-to-day tasks. Alright, here we go. Lag bolt, pressure-treated wood, which again is harder than regular lumber to go through. 3, 2, 1, 12-volt drill, go! Okay, that's as far as it went. I'm going to switch over to the 20-volt drill and we're going to give it a shot. Okay, the 20-volt drill, here we go. 20-volt drill into 3 pieces of pressure-treated wood, not pre-drilled. No, that's as far as it went. Now over to the impact driver. See how it does. Let's see how the 12-volt impact driver does. Got another lag bolt going into 3 pieces of pressure-treated 2x4s. So 12-volt impact driver, 3 pieces of pressure-treated 2x4 with no pre-drilling. Here we go. There you go, all the way in and countersunk. So that should give you an idea of the difference. 12-volt drill, 20-volt drill, 12-volt impact driver into 3 pieces of lumber, non-pre-drilled, but pressure treated. And again, because I've been touching this, I'm going to need to wash my hands before I eat. Okay, I'm going to do one more extra bonus, and that is I'm going to put the same kind of lag bolt into the same wood here, but with a 20-volt impact driver, just so you can kind of see the difference. I want to stress the one I'm going to be using is a lot more expensive and is an unfair test or comparison because it's going to be a DeWalt, which is not nearly as cheap as this. I'll be right back and we'll give it a try. Okay guys, now for the unfair comparison against a DeWalt. The only reason why I own this one is because I redid my deck last year, and this is what I used to basically rebuild the deck about 90% up from the ground. Here we go. So there you go. If you're trying to decide if it's worth the extra money to go to a major brand like a DeWalt 20-volt, and that should give you an idea. It is much faster. Both the 12-volt, economy 12-volt, $32 one, and this approximately $100-ish DeWalt. Both were able to put this in without a problem, but this was a lot faster. So that's just to give you an idea. I'm not going to tell you which one to get. I just want you to see the difference, so when you're spending your money, depending on what kind of work you're doing, you can decide what's right for you. All right, I think it's time for the conclusion. I hope all this has helped you out.
Wow, those demonstrations were really useful. If you found this information helpful or it helps you decide what it is you need to buy, please go ahead and hit that subscribe key. Without subscriptions, I don't get paid. If I don't get paid, I'll have to live under a bridge, and I don't want to live under a bridge. All right, guys, on to the conclusion.
So what do I think of the Hypertough 12-volt cordless impact driver? I think for its size, it's pretty amazing. For the fact it's 12 volts, it's pretty amazing. And for the fact it's $32, it's pretty amazing. If I had to replace, let's say, a handful of decking boards on my deck, and if I didn't already own a 20-volt tool, would I use it? Yeah, absolutely. I think I would have no troubles pulling out those decking screws, and putting down new boards would be a breeze. If I had to build an entire deck from scratch, I'll have to admit I would go for a 20-volt tool, and possibly even go for a 20-volt DeWalt or something like that, a higher-end one, but at minimum, a 20-volt tool. So what's my opinion of this overall? For the price, you can't beat it. And if you're just going to be breaking this out for those rare occasions where your drill just doesn't quite cut it, but you don't need a ton of torque and you're not in a rush where if it runs a little bit slower than a 20 volt, this should be fine. I would not use it every day. I don't think it's made to be used every day. It is a brushed motor. If you need to use a tool every day, I would recommend a brushless version of it. And Hypertough does sell a brushless version. And again, typically brushless motors last much longer than brushed motors, but it doesn't make sense to spend that extra money if you're only going to use it a few times a year. I hope the demonstrations I gave will allow you to decide for yourself if this tool will meet your needs. I do have one request though. If you enjoyed the demonstrations, the explanation of an impact driver and everything else, please hit that subscribe button. YouTube won't pay me until I get 500 subscribers. And last time I looked, I was nowhere near that. All right, guys, you have a great day, and I really appreciate your time and you listening.
So what did we learn today? That there's a big difference between impact drivers and drills, and that the clueless dude keeps getting lag nuts and lag bolts mixed up in his mind, but we'll let that slide. Guys, if you enjoyed the content, have a request. Until we get 500 subscribers, we won't get a penny from YouTube. So if you've enjoyed this, please hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, we won't get paid by YouTube, and then we end up living under a bridge. Thank you for your time, and hope you have a great day.